Stacey is a senior manager at PwC in the data and advanced analytics, a chemical engineer with an oil and gas background, an advocate for diversity in STEM and technology, currently sits on the board of for Chick Geek, a society which exists to build gender diversity in technology. Additionally, Stacy is a devoted mom, and her favorite algorithm is a random forest classifier. Ease of use, because of its ease of use, quick time to value. We are thrilled to have Stacy share her insights and her expertise with us today. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thanks, everyone. It's so nice to be surrounded by some familiar faces today. I really appreciate the support. And I wanted to give a quick shout out and a thank you to the YYC DataCon team. They've been really good to me, and this conference has really exploded in popularity, correlated with the interest in data here in Calgary. So really appreciative of all of their efforts to bring it together, and it's because of people like them that we get to come in this privileged space and share our passions. So really wanted to do a quick shout out to them. My talk today I titled Mentorship in a Moment, the Key to Success. And for those of you that don't know me, I'll go through an introduction. But the quick highlight of what I wanted to cover in this talk is I do a lot of mentorship in my advocacy work, but also in my day-to-day work. And it has been the thing that has really made a difference for me. And so, like mentioned in my bio, I started as a chemical engineer, and I've pivoted to more of a pure data science angle, and it wouldn't have happened without mentorship. And so I wanted to share that with you all today. This is the way that I usually like to start this talk. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Natural Sciences, concentrated in chemistry and physics, and a Bachelor of Engineering in Chemical Engineering. I have a professional engineering license. I have a project management professional certification. I have a data science diploma, and I just about failed math. And so I really wanted to level set that for you because it sounds kind of impressive. I really hate saying all of that in a breath because it doesn't go with my personality, but I think you can see that I work really hard. And so if my life wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for a critical mentorship in a moment. And it was in that moment that I realized that there was a key piece missing for me, and it has become my passion ever since. And so I was upgrading my math after high school and post-secondary, and I was still struggling in this math class. And I went up to the teacher afterwards and I said, I can't do this. And she just looked at me and she, lovingly chuckled. She looked me in the eye and she said, yes, you can. And she said, you just need to keep practicing. And it was less than 30 seconds. And it changed my life forever. And so I wanted to say that, mentorship sometimes is built on this pedestal, as it should be. But it can feel like a really big ask for people, join this mentorship program. It's only going to be once a month for the rest of your life, right? It feels really daunting. And so what I wanted to leave you with is that you don't have to be a part of a formal program to be a mentor. You don't have to be part of a formal program to seek mentorship. It can happen in a moment, and I just encourage you all to acknowledge those moments when they are presented to you and lean into them. So I always like to give away the start the whole thing at the beginning. So going back to my introduction, so like I said, that's my academic side. Also, as I was growing up, I knew that I was really good at computers and linear algebra, and so I thought I'd make a really great secretary. I lacked the mentorship in the early stage of my life, and that's sort of my generation. It wasn't as talked about when I was growing up, and so I know it's a lot different now. There's a lot of mentorship programs out there, but I just really has become a big fire in my belly as a result of my experiences. So, like we mentioned in my intro, I work for PwC as a senior manager in the advanced analytics practice. I work a lot with the oil and gas clients here in town, and I'm really passionate about bringing operational data into Industry 4.0. And so sometimes that looks like cloud, sometimes that looks like advanced analytics, sometimes that looks like data governance. And so those are my work passions. But I'm also on the board of Chic Geek, and for those of you that don't know Chic Geek, it's a society that exists to build gender equity in the tech space. And so that's a really exciting place that I get to contribute to these mentorship programs, and I'll get to that in more detail. I'm going to go to strengths after this. What I wanted to touch on is that I'm also a mother, and I learned through the experience of having children that it is really important to normalize challenges because it's really empowering. And so that's why I give you like all of that rich detail about my background, because I want to normalize experiences. I want to normalize the fact that it's not always easy, and that doesn't mean that we should give up. Hopefully that comes back. I like to write in my spare time, and so that's just like a quick snippet from my medium.com, and that, you know, I try to couple all of my passions there. So the other piece that I wanted you to know about my intro, and this is part of like getting into the mentorship in a moment. So, you know, this whole talk is meant to be a mentorship in a moment for, you know, those of you that have joined me here. So what I wanted to let you know is recently I had a mentorship in a moment at work where someone put me onto this Strengths Finder 2.0, and I had never heard of it before, and it has also since changed my life. So I encourage you to check it out. They asked me, you know, the common question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? They said, what are your strengths? And I really struggled to answer that question. I think as women, lots of times we can focus on where we need to grow and not a lot about like where we're really killing it. And so he encouraged me to read this book, and it has like a survey, and there's 34 strengths that they have studied, and it helps, you know, prioritize what your strengths are based on this survey, and gives you a very detailed output. And so for me, I'm futuristic, I'm a maximizer, I'm input, relator, and arranger. And you know, you can read all the details there, but it was just very illuminating for me. Like, yes, all of this resonates. And I was like, is this confirmation bias? But it was really empowering to have these words at my fingertips. And so now when you ask me, you know, why am I interested in tech? It's like, because I'm inspired by the future and what could be. And so wanted to leave you with that, because I'll get into that more in a little bit. Strength Finder 2.0. So like I said, the objective of this talk is to share with you what I have learned are the keys to success, normalize the experiences, empower you with some tactical resources. I always talk about the so what, so I want you to leave here with, I'm going to, you know, leave you with some motivation to get you to where you want to be, but I want you to know how you might get there. So if I don't achieve that today, then I haven't reached, you know, my KPIs. However, this came to me like when I was on a treadmill or something, because I was like, I have to be nerdy here. You know, this is not a linear regression answer. It is a multivariate, unsupervised learning approach. I can give you some insight into feature importance based on my model and my data set. But please, what I want you to know is that you actually need to pay attention to the outliers and lean into them, not ignore them. So that's, like I said, mentorship in a moment is an inflection point. Look for them and don't waste them. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about, you know, the women in data and AI component that makes up my life. So this stat here actually comes from Chic Geek. Women are 2 times as likely to quit the tech industry as men, and I seek to make a difference there. You know, that's what is fulfillment to me. So this talk is part of me. If you can see it, you can be it. So I hope that, you know, I achieve that as well. I love this quote of, if I see your fear and it's big, but I also see your courage and it's bigger. We can do hard things. So again, if you take nothing else away, just know that I'm trying to normalize that it's hard. I'm up here making it seem like it's easy. It's not. It's more hard than it is easy. And so what I wanted to say was that I think that we need more women giving technical talks. And here I am not giving you a technical talk. But what I do know about myself is that because I have the passion in this area, I have something to share with you, and I have something good to leave. So I actually wanted to give a quick shout out to Noha, my colleague who's doing a technical talk later. I think we need more of that from women, but you know, so I had this like duality in my head when I was coming to the team here to say I wanted to do this talk. But I do think that it's still important to talk about in today. So one other example of where we need women in tech. So like I said, I like to write, and so I often have like starts of things on my phone. And so I have a series on my phone of tech where it would be improved if women were at the table. And again, I told you I'm a mom, and so the thing, I'm curious if there's other moms in here, because one of the things that I find so annoying is when you're pregnant, your smartwatch will, give you an alert that you're not moving enough and that you ought to be doing more exercise. And I'm like, wouldn't it be great if there was a toggle where I don't have to like clear all of my data, but I could just say like, hey, I'm pregnant. And instead of you telling me to get fit, you could tell me that rest is more important. And you could tell me that there are other seasons of life to get fit, and just like really encourage that. And I have a personal experience where, as a result of me trying to get fit when I should have been focusing on being pregnant, I put myself in a little bit of danger. And so I just feel like tech would be a lot better with more women at the table to bring these types of insights, because maybe it's never occurred to someone who hasn't been pregnant. Okay, I wanted to make sure that we captured all of that. Yeah, the other piece is that when I do these one-on-one mentorship chats with people, I always talk about the current state versus the future state. And so I think it's really great when we paint a utopia and we say, this is what the world will look like when inclusion and diversity have been achieved. And won't it be great once we get there? And so it will be, but I feel like it does a little bit of a disservice to people in the current state, because we do have to acknowledge the current state. We do have to acknowledge that there are inequities. And so what I can do in these mentorship moments is I can say, like, here's what worked for me to navigate around this inequity, might work for you too, and just give some ideas of like how we can still succeed in the current state. But I call it real talk. I like to have real talk and just say, like, look, the current state is not perfect. It's going to be unfair. And here's some ways that you can still succeed. So, like I said, that's my normalizing the narrative. And so this is one of my drafts where I said, maybe if you knew how hard it was for me to pivot to, you wouldn't hold yourself back. So that's really what drives me is I get a spark when other people reach out to me and say, based on our mentorship interaction, I made a change. And so I think that one of the most powerful ways that I can do that is by being real with you. I don't know if you've heard of Ruby Carr. She's a Canadian poet. She's really fantastic. And she has a lot of poetry around normalizing being a woman where you are at today. And so I love this quote from her. I will never have this version of me again. Let me slow down and be with her. Because, we're always, well, at least me, always striving for that next role, that next project, that next, milestone. And I think, a lot of us are like that in this field. We're very driven. And so I just wanted to normalize the narrative around being present and coping through the hard. Okay, so getting to the so what. My story started with networking. And so networking I define as the mentorship that you can have control over. So like I said, mentorship often looks like a program that you enroll to or accepted to, and it doesn't always have to. And so I'm probably in good company here, generalizing for scientists. I am actually introverted. I really don't like to be in large groups, but I challenge myself because I know there's lots of value to get out of it. And so I leaned into curiosity and networked in spite of being introverted. So when I started my career, it was, very early on, I read that networking was of the utmost importance to career success, so say no more. I got to work early and often, and I reached out to all kinds of people in my organization. I won't date myself, but even then, Outlook existed, and I could get everyone's email. And I was like, this is fantastic. I can reach out to anyone. And so I soon also reached out beyond my organization, and I would go for a coffee chat with anyone who would make the time for me. And I just was, open-ended. I want to know about your career. Tell me about your career. And so what I wanted you to know is that through that experience, and I wish I would have kept tally, because it's got to be in the hundreds, if not maybe nearing 1,000 of people I've networked with. I'm telling you, I was aggressive about it. And what I learned from that is that people want to help. So again, when I do these one-on-one mentorship things, what I want people to know, because I know it's hard, LinkedIn has been great. It makes, in the same way that Outlook did for me, it gives you access to almost everybody. But there's lots of times you're not going to get a response. And so when I do these one-on-one mentorships things, I'm like, I want you to know that it's not about you. People want to help. Don't take it personally, but people are busy. And so I have to touch wood every time I say this, but I have never had somebody say to me that they don't want to have a coffee chat with me. Lots of times I don't get a response, but it's never about I don't want to. So if I can leave you with another thing, it doesn't mean that you're not enough. It doesn't mean that you're bugging them, and it doesn't mean that you should give up. It's like the law of averages. You have to cast many nets. So that's what I've learned from networking. And then the hot take that I want to leave you with is that everyone's definition of success is different. Everyone's path to success is different. Let's call it 1,000 people I've networked with. Not one of them have had a single story or like a single same story. So what I want you to take away from this mentorship in a moment is I want you to start thinking about what is your definition of success. And the tactical piece of that is that there are some resources that you can use to start to understand that if you haven't already. So like I said, Strength Finder 2.0 is one way, but also personality tests, like what is the makeup of you and what makes you tick. I find those really helpful. And then also, I'm always operational excellence minded, and I use KPIs. So I think about what does success look like to me, and what does success look like to me, and am I taking the right steps towards that on my path to achieve it. And I think my next one, no. At one time I had a photo of the Gilmore Girls because one of my favorite quotes is from Lorelai, and she said, again, going back to women in AI, she said, it's your God-given right as a woman to change your mind. So just because you've decided this is what success looks like, this is my path to success, I encourage you to check in often and reevaluate. Is this still how I define success? Is this still the path I want to be on? And again, for the parents in the room, you know that kids change that in a big way. And so I had to get really real with myself and say, okay, how do I define success? And, like not to get too meta, but like, if we're only given one life to live, I don't want to waste it. And so I give the anecdote that if, you might make assumptions about how I want my kids to live their lives. And sometimes I would say, like they can be anything they want so long as it's an engineer. But honestly, if my son came to me and said, I want to be a nomad, so long as he's intentional about it, and he said, this is what success looks like to me, I'm 100% supportive. So I just really encourage you to be intentional. So that's the start of mentoring. It's the networking piece, and that's the part that you can really control. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about actual mentorship in this talk. And so for those of you that don't know, that's Kylie, the executive director of Chic Geek, and she's a good friend of mine. We happen to be twinning this day, and so we took a nice photo. So she has a program as a part of Chic Geek that is called Career Pathing, and I'm a mentor in that program and sometimes a mentee. There was a time when I was really struggling with whatever phase of life I was at, and I reached out and I said, I need to jump to the mentee side. Who can you connect me with in Career Pathing? And it was such a valuable experience. So Career Pathing is what I call just-in-time mentorship, and it's different than other programs because, and I hate to phrase it this way, but it's someone who's a little bit ahead of you in your career path. I don't like to think of it as ahead or behind, but it's the easiest way for me to characterize it. So it's somebody who's just a few steps forward from where you want to be, and so again, it can give you very tactical advice. So I encourage you, if you're not a part of Career Pathing already, to seek it out on our website and know that it's a very good mentorship program. But I think I've said enough so far throughout this presentation that it also doesn't have to be a part of a formal program. That mentorship in a moment is just as valuable, if not more so. And so I just wanted to use this presentation to put these ideas in your mind so that as you go through your careers and you encounter people, you look for those moments. And I wasn't sure if she would be here, but also sometimes you can get really lucky and get a tech fairy godmother. And so she's not here, but I have a tech fairy godmother. And so every now and again, you are really blessed to meet mentors in your life that stay there forever and are people that you can go back to many, many times. And so again, you're lucky if you get one of those. And so if you do, really enrich that relationship. But you can't enrich every relationship, so just be honest with yourself. Yeah. So then the next piece that we have to address, and I don't have an answer for this one, and I really hate that for those of you that know me, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about sponsorship. So there's networking, there's mentorship, and there's sponsorship as a part of like this whole package of like what we broadly call mentorship. And for those of you that have read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, you'll know that this is not my idea. But sponsorship is the action behind mentorship. It's when you're not in the room and somebody speaks up on your behalf and says, I think Stacey would be really good at that. Let's take a chance on her. And broadly speaking, women are less likely to be beneficiaries of sponsorship than men. And so again, I think education is the first step. If you don't know about it, how could you action it? It is more powerful than mentorship because it is that action at the level that you're not yet at. So again, in the same way as a fairy godmother, when you can get a sponsor, that is, beyond powerful. And so my call to action is for people that are in a position to be a sponsor, please do so. But also don't forget to follow it up with coaching. And so this is speaking from a little bit of personal experience where I actually witnessed somebody sponsor me in a meeting, and I was like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? It's like they've set me up for like to have this great opportunity, and I was like, how the heck do I get there? And so I think that part is not talked enough about, is that it's one thing to sponsor someone, and that is huge, but if you don't coach them to succeed, then you both fail. And so please, when you take, please don't be willy-nilly with your sponsorship, because you really do need to have a intentional follow-up to help them succeed. So I'm being mindful of time, just in case there is the odd question. But in conclusion, I wanted you to know that we all have different paths. We are all worthy of success, and we are nothing if not intersectional. This is not just a talk for women in data, this is a talk for inclusion and diversity in tech. I always say I am the face of women in data, so that's what I can speak to from a personal experience. But this goes beyond just women in data. It's all about being intersectional. And I don't know if you watched the Oscars this past weekend, or maybe it was 2 weekends ago now. But this quote really stuck with me, is that dreams are something you have to believe in, so please keep yours alive. Thank you. Happy to take any questions if people have questions about mentorship or women in data.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I was just wondering, what would be your advice in terms of how to enrich our relationship with our mentor or people in our network?
That's a great question. I think you can hear me. It's as simple as taking a personal interest. So especially in the workplace, it's really tempting to just be really business oriented, and I can, tell you that that's how I am. I'm very business. But it's important to take a personal interest. Sometimes my job looks like sales, and I know that I don't make a sale if I'm going to sell you something. I know that a sale will happen if I take the time to get to know you as a person, if I take the time to care about what's happening at your work, if I care about your pain points. And so it has to be really a selfless thing as a mentee in order to enrich that relationship, is to treat it as a relationship. And that takes time. And I hate that answer too, because one of the things that I've learned about myself from the surveys is that I'm impatient. And so you can't speed up that process. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So women in tech, of course, as you said, they're kind of limited in number. So what do you do when you are the only one in the room, and how to mitigate the pressure that is upon you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look for the allies is the first part, and so that works when you know the people. When it's not the people, again, I hate this question, but this answer, but it's acknowledging the current state is fake it till you make it. And so lots of times when I'm in a room where I don't know anyone, and if I am the only woman, I just have to trust in myself, have confidence in myself, and again, that takes time. I think that comes with age. And yeah, just lean into the fact that you are worthy. And I wish it was simpler than that, but it's the current state. but yeah, also look for the allies. And advice that I got recently, which is kind of cool in like, you know, post-COVID, the hybrid world, is that you can be pinging your ally, you know, on Teams or whatever, and say like, could you speak up on this? Or like, you know, like, could you say this on my behalf, or things like that. And then you can have a coffee afterwards to say like, you know, I was feeling this way and I would really appreciate it if next time you could help me with this. So those are a few ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As a mentor, as a mentor, as a people leader, whatever, consulting, one of the things I find difficult, and we do have a equity problem, hard to avoid, and it's like on the one hand, sometimes I feel like I'm sitting there thinking it's the same problems I see with everybody. It's imposter syndrome. It's not introversion. Sorry, painfully introverted myself, and it's hard to drive engagement. You see people that sit back and ask people of them as one-dimensional technical people, that you see that they have skills and more to give. Sorry. And it, I've not been able to get some of these people to speak up more for themselves, to expect more from themselves. I don't want to disrespect their definition of success. You know, we all know the tech employee who after 30 years would just like to write the code and go home. But I'm just wondering if, in your experience, you've found the right line, I guess, between sort of letting them do that and trying to push for who you think they could be.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And so, you know, sometimes that'll be called like, not that, but for myself, it'll be called like a savior complex. And that's something that I struggle with, is because I definitely want everybody to succeed, whatever their definition of success is. And so sometimes that's learning about what their definition of success is and, you know, being respectful of that, like you said. But in my experience, and I don't want to speak too broadly, but I have the privilege of getting to have a lot of one-on-ones with a lot of diversity. And there are, you know, speaking as a white female, there are huge barriers that I'm not privy to. And so the more that I network, the more that I get to know people, the more I can understand their barriers, or at least like get some insight to their barriers. And so I hope I can say this as fact, that the barriers are, you know, beyond anything we're tackling yet. And again, that's current state. I don't like that answer, and it's hard. But again, getting to know people that are experiencing barriers, validating their experience. I always say, like, people don't talk about validation enough. Like, it is the most powerful thing if somebody can say to me, like, yeah, that's hard, and sit in that moment with me instead of like trying to fix it and just validating. That's hard. It can be really liberating and be like enough to just be like, you know, breathe through it, shake it off. Okay, let's get up and fight another day. So don't undervalue validation. But going back to the savior complex, like, we do also have to understand that we can't save everyone. I'm only one person, and I do a lot of mentorship, and I do my best, but I also have to have compassion with myself and know that there's a personal responsibility too on the side of the other person, in spite of the barriers. And so I do try to weave that into the mentorship too, as like, let's acknowledge the current state, let's acknowledge that it's hard, but what is still within your control? And focus on those control points can also be empowering, because when you feel like you have control, you feel like you can control the outcome. And so it's, again, current state, they don't have full control. We don't have full control. But let's focus on that and really try to make those moments count. Hope that helps. Thanks, everyone. Are we out of time? Yes. Thank you.